Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Innal hamdalillah wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulihi Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Respected friends, we say thank you and jazakumullahu khairan to one and all for attending this program which is being hosted by Salam Media. But before we start, we'll request Maulana Yusuf Saleji to read a short passage from the Quran, inshallah.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والضحى والليل إذا سجى ما ودعك ربك وما قلى وللآخرة خير لك من الأولى ولسوف يعطيك ربك فترضى ألم يجدك يتيما فآوى ووجدك ضالا فهدى ووجدك عائلا فأغنى فأما اليتيم فلا تقهر وأما السائل فلا تنهر وأما بنعمة ربك فحدث صدق الله العلي العظيم.
Jazakallah to Maulana for that beautiful recitation of the Holy Quran. So Alhamdulillah, this evening we are very, very fortunate to host a world-renowned and a human rights lawyer that will share things that we haven't heard in our entire life. So inshallah today we are here to hear him and not me. So before that I will call upon Maulana Muhammad Vanka. Maulana Muhammad Vanka doesn't need any introduction. Maulana is the Imam of Amshlanga Rocks Masjid. Also, he is involved in many other masajids around the Durban Central as well as surrounding areas. Maulana is a great orator. Alhamdulillah, Maulana is involved in a lot of activities in and around, not only in Durban, but around the country. Alhamdulillah, Maulana is very, very well versed. He qualified in Madrasa in Amia in Camperdown. And Alhamdulillah, Maulana is involved in social activities, social work, besides the Islamic work that Maulana is involved in. So Alhamdulillah, this evening also we are very, very fortunate that Maulana is with us. Together with that, Maulana is very, very involved in the Hajj travels. Maulana goes across and he guides the South African Hujjaj. And Alhamdulillah, many, many people benefit from him. Many Hujjaj benefit from him. And you will see that Maulana is a world-class orator. He comes on radio. He comes on Islamic TV. And Alhamdulillah, many, many people benefit from Maulana's discourses around the country. So I will call upon Maulana Vanka to give a few words to us.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. نحمده ونصلي على رسوله الكريم. أما بعد. So I've been given 12 minutes. So inshallah my brake pads are going a bit weak, but inshallah we'll land in 12 minutes. Inshallah. Respected elders, beloved brothers and sisters, and our esteemed guest. It is the collective aim of the forces of disbelief to extinguish the light of the Almighty on the face of this earth. And Allah says, Wallahu mutimmu nuri walau karihal kafirun. The plan of Allah is, the agenda of Allah is, He will protect His deen, He will safeguard His deen. Walau karihal kafirun, walau karihal mushrikun. even though the polytheists may dislike it. You and I, we come from the history of apartheid. Whether it took 2, 3, 4, 5 decades, whatever it was, ultimately in the planning of Allah, the system of apartheid had to be dismantled. That's the planning of Allah. In Hadith Qudsi, Allah Ta'ala says, Ya ibadi, inni harramtu dhulma ala nafsi waj'altuhu bainakum muharraman fala tadhalamu. That, O my servants, out of my sheer mercy, I have made oppression and exploitation forbidden upon myself. How dare you oppress? I made oppression and exploitation forbidden upon myself. How dare you oppress? You know, I came across an amazing incident which is written in the books, that back in the day there was an elderly woman, you know, living on a farm, and the only source of income that she had one cow. She used to milk the cow and feed the little kids. There was a tyrant ruler at that time moving with his entourage. So he snatches this cow, slaughtered the cow, roasted the cow. Naturally, this woman was perturbed and disturbed. Someone told her that tomorrow the king will be passing by on that bridge. Stand on that bridge and make known to him your concern. If he hears you out, well and good. If not, that's the condition of a tyrant ruler. The next day, as this king passes with his entourage, this elderly woman, she looks at this king and she says, I have one question to ask you. Do you want to settle me on this bridge, or do you want to settle me on the bridge of Sirat? We need to understand that Allah has not made this world a place where justice will be meted out. Allah has not kept in the capacity of this world for justice to be meted out. If this world was a place of justice, Allah would have never allowed the grandson of the Nabi of Allah to pass away on the battlefield of Karbala. Tilkal ayyam nudawiluha bayna nas. Some will be given victory, some will be given respite, some will be disgraced, some will be given honor. Hussein radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, moments before his assassination, before he passed away, he calls this little child Abdullah, the great-great-grandchild of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. As he's about to embrace this child, he picks up this child. A stray arrow comes, enters the neck of this child, separating the head from the body. Today we see footage, it makes me cry, it makes you cry. I say, before we become victims of a psychological despondency, which in essence is the object of the media, what do we say? What does the Quran teach us? Inna yawm al-fasli kana miqata. The day of Qiyamah will see that justice will prevail. You know, Hajjaj bin Yusuf, that notorious bloodshedder, scholars have written conservatively, he killed nothing less than 120,000 people. When he died, someone had seen him in a vision and a dream, and they asked him, Ma fa'al Allahu bik? How did you fare before the Almighty Allah? What did he say? قَتَلَنِي بِكُلِّ قَتِيلٍ قَتَلْتُهُ قَتْلًا. In lieu of every unjust killing that I perpetrated or indicated, Allah made me taste the agony of death one time. وَقَتَلَنِي بِسَعِيدِ بْنِ جُبَيْرٍ سَبْعِينَ قَتْلًا. But when I killed Sa'id ibn Jubair, Allah told me, you wouldn't die once, you will die 70 times. You will die 70 times. If you open Ibn Majah on page 291, understand this world is not a place of justice and retribution. It's the day of Qiyamah. The day of Qiyamah will see that justice will prevail. So Fir'aun, who was Fir'aun? The notorious bloodshedder. Bayezid Bustami has written that Fir'aun, not a day in his life did he ever experience a headache. That was the perpetual affluence that Allah had given him. We all know the incident. We don't have time. 600,000 magicians. We all know the incident. There was a person in the time of Fir'aun, listen to this. He had accepted Islam, and his wife also accepted Islam discreetly. One day she was busy combing Fir'aun's daughter's hair, and as the comb falls down, she said, Ta'isa Fir'aun. What a dictator Fir'aun is. What a oppressor Fir'aun is. This woman is brought in front of Fir'aun. Fir'aun looks at her, "Man rabbuk, ayyatu al-kha'ina." Who is your Lord? She said, "My Lord is Allah, He is your Lord." Fir'aun looks at her, "Ila hadha al-had, in front of me you deny my divinity?" She says, "I believe in one Allah." What does Fir'aun do? Faqala al-hurras, he called some of his guards. The previous Fir'auns killed the boys and left the girls. The Fir'auns of today are taking both the women and the men. What a sick society we are living in. He called some of his guards and he said, "Do me a favor, burn this woman alive. But before you burn her alive, ihriquha wahriqu abna'aha amamaha." Take her children and burn her children before her eyes. These little kids, these little children were taken and thrown into this fire. This woman was burnt alive. When my Nabi and your Nabi ascends on the journey of Mi'raj, I gave you the reference, Ibn Majah, page 291, you could reference it. When my Nabi ascends on the journey of Mi'raj, he comes to a certain place. He said, "Jibreel, ma hadhihi rihu tayyiba." I get a brilliant fragrance coming from this grave. What is this? Jibreel said, "That is the grave of the slave of Fir'aun who died whilst giving her life for Allah. Next to her is a husband and next to her are her children." Decades had lapsed. When my Nabi and your Nabi's conveyance ascends to the heavens, he gets this brilliant fragrance that comes. Respected brothers, respected sisters, this is the plight of the Muslim Ummah. As-sa'idu man wa'idha bighayri. An intelligent one is the one who heeds the happenings around him. An intelligent one is the one who heeds the happenings around him. We are not living in a bubble. We're not living on an island. Like they say in English, you and I walk miles to digest our food. There are many people in the world who have to walk miles just to get a plate of food. Oppression, exploitation, it's happening on the grand scale. Really, we need to make a lot of shukr to the Almighty Allah for the privileges and the bounties that Allah has showered upon us. May Allah Ta'ala reward Salam Media. Allah reward our respected brother for coming all the way, to conscientize the community, of South Africa. It's important that we need to enlighten ourselves and we need to make dua and pray, for the release of our sister Afia. I just learned earlier on that she's a hafiza, of Quran Kareem, and Mullah Arafat, he mentioned this to me earlier on, that in honor of the fact that she has memorized Quran, Salam Media has created and printed these book markers with this intention that inshallah you take it and place it in your Quran. And every time when you open your Quran, you could pick up your hands and make dua for our sister Afia. And he's asked for a humble contribution from those that have gathered. How much? 100 rands, inshallah. Minimum 100 rands. Inshallah, like I always say, they say, I'll just end on this. The scholar one day he entered the masjid and he said, "I've got good news and bad news." He said, "The good news is we now have sufficient funds to complete the masjid project. The bad news is the money is still in your pockets." Allah Ta'ala grant us the understanding. Once again, Jazakallah khairan, respected to the team of Salam Media for inviting me, to be part of this program. In fact, I thought they're going to give me about 40 minutes, but khair. I think we 11 minutes and 40 seconds. Barakallahu feekum. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Jazakallah to Maulana Muhammad Vanka for those inspiring words. And unfortunately, because of time constraints, we cannot give you more time. So on behalf of the Pietermaritzburg Muslim community, as well as the Palestine Solidarity Group Pietermaritzburg, we would like to acknowledge everybody who has come to this event here at the Nizamiya Islamic School. Brother Idris Khamisa has traveled all the way from Durban, so we acknowledge your presence also. Likewise, in the same way, we would like to acknowledge the presence of all our esteemed guests who have gathered here to listen to this important message. And inshallah, we make dua that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala frees Afia Siddiqui and all those prisoners who are locked up around the world. Allah ta'ala makes it easy for them. Allah ta'ala brings about freedom in the land of Palestine and Sudan, Kashmir, all these places Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brings about freedom. So I would like to welcome Mr. Clive Smith, and we are very humble that you have visited our small beloved city of choice, Pietermaritzburg, which is the capital city of KwaZulu-Natal. And we are here at the school, which is known as the Nizamiya Islamic School Hall. A school functions here from grade 1 to grade 12. Salam Media, we would like to tell Jazakumullah and thank you too also for allowing us to host an esteemed guest like this. Mr. Clive's CV is exceptionally big and large, and I would suggest that people go onto his channels and read more about him instead of me wasting your time and listening to me. We are here to listen to Mr. Clive. So I would like to welcome to you, and you can continue with our program.
Okay, thank you very much. Look, I've got a few confessions to make. First, I got off the plane from England this morning. I don't know what country I'm in. I don't know what day it is. I've never been to South Africa before, which is really horrific. I've been to 72 countries. I can't believe I've never been here before. I crawled out of my sick bed to come here because, don't worry, I'm not contagious anymore, but my dear wife brought the most fabulous English flu back to our house about 2 weeks ago. And I've been in bed for the last 10 days. It was really unpleasant, and I'm not going to give it to you because I don't have it anymore, but I may just pass out up here and I'm going to start coughing horribly, for which I apologize. But anyway, look, thank you very much for coming. Thank you very much to Ponti and them for spending so much time putting this together. I am very much the second string. I had hoped that Afia Siddiqui would come and talk to you because Afia I've known now since she bullied me into taking her sister's case 2.5 years ago. If you're ever in trouble, you need that woman as your sister. She is the most extraordinary person. So I wish she was here, but I believe it's fair to say that your government hasn't given her a visa, so there should be rioting in the streets, because you should get her here next time. But in the meantime, because I am what we call an OPWM, right? You know what that means? That means old privileged white male. And I come from Britain. I've got an American passport and a British passport, so they just let me in the country. They obviously don't know how dangerous we are. As a British American person, I get to apologize to the whole world about all sorts of things all the time. Anyway, it's a great pleasure to be here. I'm only here for 5 days because I have to go back and look after my teenager. I know what teenagers are like. So what we're going to talk about is Afia Siddiqui. I hope you will feel free to interrupt at any minute. You know what? I know what I'm going to say pretty much. I find myself exquisitely boring. So it's much more interesting if you interrupt. I mean, we'll have questions at the end anyhow, but interrupt whenever you like. I have spent the last 41 years first representing about 400 people facing the death penalty, which is why I became a lawyer in the first place. I'm not a big fan of the death penalty. I think it's a terrible, terrible idea. But then when 9/11 came along, we came up with other terrible ideas. Back in the good old days of the death penalty, we just picked on black people, right? That's what we did as Americans. Then the major beneficiaries of 9/11 were my African American clients. They really were, because suddenly we decided to hate Muslim men with beards, right? And one of the extraordinary things about Guantanamo Bay, I brought the very first case against Guantanamo Bay on February the 19th, 2002. We filed it in Washington, and I made the mistake of going on Fox television to defend it because it was the right thing to do. I got accused of being a traitor to America 13 times in a 5-minute interview. And they tracked down my unlisted telephone number, and I got some amazing death threats. It was fabulous. But, it was because all those people we took to Guantanamo Bay, we had the same lie as we had in the death penalty. Indeed, everyone who went to Guantanamo Bay faced execution for the heinous offense of opposing the United States. And later on this week, we'll have Muazzam Beg. Many of you will know who Muazzam is. When I first met Muazzam, it was in Guantanamo Bay, and I had a letter in hand from his British lawyer, Gareth Pearce, saying, "Don't worry, you're in good hands. Clive's done hundreds of death penalty cases." Muazzam said, "God, I didn't think they were going to execute me. Now you really got me scared, if that's what it's all about." But it's extraordinary, and I just want to tell you a little bit about Guantanamo before we get to Afia, because you need to understand just how terrible our system is. There have been 780 prisoners in Guantanamo Bay, put there by the most powerful person on the planet. 756 have been released, 9 died. There are 15 people left there, of whom 3 have been cleared. That means, and to get someone out, I've represented 87 of those people. Ooh, plunged into darkness. Isn't this exciting? Okay, all right. So I've represented 87 of these guys, and all of my 87 are now free. They've gone home to their families, thank goodness. But to get someone out of Guantanamo, I have to convince the top 6 American intelligence agencies that they're no threat to anyone. So when Donald Rumsfeld said that everyone in Guantanamo Bay are bad men and the worst terrorists in the world, when I went down there, I thought, yeah, some of them probably were up to some naughty stuff. It was really hard to find an honest-to-goodness terrorist in Guantanamo Bay. I'm not sure I ever have. And to get so far 98.4% of the prisoners we locked up out, we had to prove they were innocent. And I challenge you to identify a single thing in human practice where we get it wrong 98.4% of the time. I was going to Guantanamo on British Airways flight, just like the one I was on this morning, and I talked to the stewardess, and I said, if you were on a plane that either got to the wrong airport 98.5% of the time, or worse yet, crashed 98% of the time, would you carry on working for British Airways? And she said, no, certainly not. Because what we did was so bad, and this is accepted by the US intelligence agencies, that they've got it wrong 98.4% of the time. Now, you need to get a grip on that, because if I say that the CIA said that Afia Siddiqui was one of the leaders of Al-Qaeda, one or two of you might think, where there's smoke, there's fire. Maybe she did something awful. The sensible ones among you will say, well, actually, there weren't any women leaders in Al-Qaeda because they're quite a chauvinist group of people. But that went right over the heads of the CIA people. But I want you to understand how bad we were, because then you can begin to understand what happened to Afia. And it took me quite a while to work out why and how we made so many mistakes in Guantanamo Bay. And it was really this. And I want to turn the lights on again. You can perfectly well see this, right? I want to see you people. Can someone turn the light on? Because I want you to look at the person on your right? And I want you to say to me, I'm going to offer you $250,000 if you say that the person on your right was in Tora Bora as a terrorist. And $250,000 in cash I'm giving to you. So put your hand up if you're going to take my $250,000. You, sir, can do it, because he's only 15, right? So he couldn't have been in Tora Bora in 2001. So you can actually cut a deal with a young man next to you and give him half the money, and you can say he was in Tora Bora. Is that a deal? Is that what you're going to do? Yeah, you are. You're going to say that about your dad too, aren't you? But this is how everyone ended up there. The Pakistani, the ISI in particular, and I've got to tell you, I'm not a big fan of the Pakistan establishment. I think I've done enough now to get banned from that country forever, because I represent both the most powerful, the most well-known woman, Afia Siddiqui, and Imran Khan's an old friend of mine. And, I've said some rather unpleasant things about their people. And I've got an ISI agent who's snitched on them, who's testifying in Afia's case. That's really going to piss them off. Anyway, it makes me very happy. So the reason we ended up getting this so wrong was we were handing out so much money. There was another reason why we got it so wrong with Afia. With Afia, the CIA paid $55,000, which is a lot of money in Pakistan. But the other thing that happened is that we tortured a bunch of people into making statements, and we would show pictures of different suspected terrorists, and then we'd torture you and we'd say, what can you tell me about this person? What's your name, young man? Mohammed. Okay, Mohammed, I'm afraid you're going to be my guinea pig. And if I'm torturing you, right? Are you a terrorist? I'm going to pull your fingernails out. Are you a terrorist? I'm going to slap you about, and then I'm going to take a razor blade to your genitals, like what happened to Binyam Mohammed. Are you a terrorist? Yes. Of course you're a terrorist. Now, I'm going to show you a picture book. And in that picture book, there's a bunch of bearded men who you might know, and there's one woman. And I want you got to make up a story about someone. Who are you going to make the story up about? Yeah, why? You're a very good torture victim, Mohammed. You're doing well. You'd be an ideal torture victim for the CIA because they rely on someone to do this, right? And this is all very serious. So why are you going to pick on the woman?
Because she can't do anything about it.
But also, do you really think the woman's going to be head of Al-Qaeda? No. So you're sitting there thinking, surely these Americans aren't so stupid that they think the woman is the head of Al-Qaeda, so I can safely snitch on her and she'll be all right, right? So you really are thinking like Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, interestingly enough. You've got a future head of number 3 in Al-Qaeda sitting next to you, Dad. So this is what happened, is that a bunch of people made up stories about Afia because they had been tortured and they thought it was safe to do it. And some of them were people I represented in Guantanamo Bay who admitted they did that, and they were pretty sheepish about it, and I'm not going to tell you their names because it's embarrassing for them. So not only were we paying money, but we were also doing this. But you have to think, why did they suspect Afia in the first place, right? And this is always the challenge, is where did these people, bears of very little brain, come up with the idea that Afia was a bad person? And we'll get to that. Now let's talk about Afia's case. A lot of you will know some about it, but I want to show you some pictures, because how many people here are parents? You don't have to be a parent to understand this stuff, right? But I think if you've got children, I've got one son, and if anyone did anything to my son, goodness knows what I would do, right? And one of the things over the years, I've represented, as I say, a lot of people have been tortured, a lot of people who have gone through horrible stuff. It never occurred to me 20 years ago that I'd be saying this, but I have. And I thought I'd seen it all. But the reason that it turns out I was wrong yet again is, first, Afia was the first and only woman who really went through the rendition to torture program. But, honestly, is it worse to torture a woman than a man? What do you think? I'm going to ask you guys over here. What do you think? Is it worse to torture a woman than a man? I don't think so. Piss off. Why is it worse to torture you than me? I don't think so. But some people will think so. But I don't think so. I think it's just despicable no matter who you do it to. So it is unique that she was a woman going through this, but the really unique thing were her children, right? Now, Afia, on March the 30th, 2003, was taking a plane from Karachi airport up to Islamabad to take up a new job as an educationalist, because that's what she was, a teacher. And she was having an argument with that kid, Ahmed, age 6, here. And the reason she was having an argument with Ahmed is he was annoyed because they weren't going by train. And he wanted to go by train because his favorite book was Thomas the Tank Engine, right? This is what was going on. This is the leader of Al-Qaeda. This is what they were having a conversation about, right? And she's going up to Islamabad. She had her 3 children. Suleiman was 6 months old. That's the little baby over there. And then you got Mariam. She was actually just 4 years old. And Ahmed, who was 6, in the taxi. And they were talking about Thomas the Tank Engine. And this is when the CIA and the ISI swoop in. And it's just extraordinary. I mean, here's something I was asking some of these guys here. I'm going to tell you what the CIA thought was a scientific fact, and you tell me if you think it's real. So the CIA guys, they're mostly these white guys, right? And they think that there's only one way to go to heaven, and that's to be an American Christian. Put your hand up if you agree with that. Do you think, no, you don't nod your head. No, what are you nodding for? You don't agree with that, you mad people. They're deranged, right? But that's what they believed. And at least, when you're dealing with these people, you've got to get in their minds. And so you've got to think the way they think. And that's the way they think. And they took Mariam, who was a U.S. citizen born in Boston, which doesn't mean a lot to me. I'm a U.S. citizen, but I don't think that makes me superior to you lot. But the CIA is meant to be there protecting American citizens as their number one job, right? So the CIA took her 1,000 kilometers north to a war zone in Afghanistan, forcibly adopted her into a white Christian CIA family, and she was meant to stay there forever. And she was there for 7 years, right? That's the first kid. The second kid, I find this even more bizarre because at least you can think in the way that a mad CIA agent would think on the Christian stuff. But with Ahmed, US citizen born in Boston, age 6, they took him to Kabul in a war zone 1,000 kilometers away, and they put him in prison as a 6-year-old American child, and they changed his name to Ihsan Ali and said that if you ever say you're Ahmed, son of Afia Siddiqui, we'll kill you. When he was finally released 5 years later, long story, which we'll get to, he still told his uncle, his great-uncle, that his name was Ihsan Ali. He'd been so coerced that he still wouldn't admit who he was. The third child, and here's a question for all of you. Apparently, the CIA and the ISI dropped Suleiman on his head and killed him. But there's only one witness to that. And that's Ahmed, who was a 6-year-old boy who was traumatized and being kidnapped. And I'm just not sure it's true. When I first heard it, I thought, yeah, he must be dead. He hasn't shown up for 23 years. But then you learn what happened to the other kids, and I think there's a 50-50 chance that Suleiman is right now living in Baltimore, Maryland, or someplace like that, and he's been adopted into a white American family. And as knows he's Pakistani heritage, but he doesn't know who his biological parents are. And if you think that I'm crazy for saying that, I've been in Afghanistan a lot recently because I get along with the Taliban. I represented them all when they were in Gitmo. And they're very nice to me, and they're very helpful in the cases I'm looking into. And one thing I discovered in Afghanistan is when we as Americans left Afghanistan in 2022, we abducted 1,450 Afghan children without legal right to do that. We took them to America. Now, we did that from the typical American perspective that, everyone wants to be American. And so the idea that we did that en masse to these kids, who, by the way, I have every intention of getting back to their birth parents, it makes you think, well, yeah, they might have done that to Suleiman. But this is the question. You have to always think about how the impact is on Afia. And so you've got to choose one way or the other, right? Because I'm an American, so I know all about torture. And if you don't choose, I'm looking at you, and if you don't vote one way or the other, I'm going to come and slap you. Is that all right? Fair enough. You don't mind that, do you? All right, you've got to choose one thing or the other. here we are, 23 years on. Would you rather, A, have some sense of closure by knowing that Suleiman's dead and where he's buried and whatever, or B, just hold out this faint hope that 23 years on, he's still alive somewhere in Baltimore or wherever? So who votes that you'd want closure, that you'd want to know your child was dead? And remember, you've got to vote one way or the other. I'm looking at you. I'm looking at you, Mohammed. Which way are you going to vote? Sorry? You want? The second option. Okay, so no one wants closure. That's surprising. Yeah, some people do want closure. Yeah, and you think about those kidnapping cases that are very notorious, like I don't know if you know the little Maddie case out of England. That girl's been missing for 18 years, and her parents are still agonizing every day about where she might be. And it's pretty obvious to most of us that poor child's dead. So that's one side. Who would want to hold out a faint hope that your child is still alive 23 years later? You have to put your hand up. You can't just nod. All right. Now, what would you do about it? Mohammed, you're the best person to ask this. What would you do if you knew your child might still be alive? What would you do? You'd parachute into Kabul, right? You don't care if there's a war going on. You're going to go and find that child. Now, here's where we learn about Afia's husband. Afia was married to this guy, Amjad Khan, he's just not my favorite human being, right? And Amjad Khan was the one who got her into a lot of trouble when his soon-to-be ex-wife, because Afia's dad told her she had to divorce him, when she disappeared and the 3 children disappeared, he didn't spend his time trying to find where these kids were. He married another woman, had another little girl, and called her Mariam. So rather than get his original Mariam back, he just gets another one. I just find that unfathomable as a father. I would be all over finding my children. Now, they took Afia to Bagram Air Force Base. What you've got to understand is the CIA still lies about this, right? So what we have to do, what I have to do as Afia's lawyer, is I got to prove what the CIA did. Well, fortunately, I find that great fun. And I've been to Bagram a few times, and I've been to Afghanistan 5 times, and all these people come forward because they wanted to tell someone that they saw Afia in Bagram. And I've got all these guys who saw her there. First, she was in what's called the ISO unit, the isolation unit. Then she was in what the Americans call the discotheque. Why do you think we call it the discotheque, Mohammed? Sorry? Yeah, you are. Why is it called the discotheque? Do you go naughtily to a discotheque when your father's not watching? You should. Let me tell you, they're great, real discotheques. But the reason we call this a discotheque is we tortured people with loud music, right? Now, here's a question for you, Mohammed, and you've got to vote one way or the other. I'm going to either torture you the way that we Americans tortured Binyam Mohammed, the razor blade to the genitals, right? Choice 1. Choice 2, I'm going to play loud music 24 hours a day at you for a month. Which are you going to go with? Choice 2, the music. Surprisingly, he's wrong. Surprisingly, it's far worse. You know, when you've got physical torture, you know it's coming, you know it's going to end, it's nasty, and Binyam's the expert, right? Because he had both of these. But when they use psychological torture on you, and this is something I never thought I'd ever learn, you begin to go mad, and you begin to feel your mind slipping away. So the real question is this: would you rather, these are cheerful choices I'm giving you, Mohammed, would you rather I blinded you in your left eye, choice number 1, or number 2, that you went insane? Blinded in the left eye, that's the choice, right? And these are the perverse things that over the last 24 years, since 9/11, that I've been dealing with. Not me, it's my poor clients who have to go through it. But this poor woman was taken to Bagram Air Force Base, where they played loud music at her. They pretended to torture her children in front of her. Now, here's a question for you. I'm torturing your children. You're obviously just going to tell me whatever I want to hear, right? But I'm going to carry on doing it because I'm just a sociopath, right? What are you going to do to stop me? Sorry? What can you do to stop me? Well, you got to think. What are you going to do? This is what Afia was. She's sitting there watching children being abused in front of her, and she thinks they're her children. They're not her children, actually. Well, you've done that already, but they don't stop. So what do you do next? These are unfathomable things that this poor woman was required to think. And you know what she told me? She said, I decided the only thing I could do was pretend I didn't care. That I thought that was the only thing that would stop these people from doing it. Can you imagine having to make that choice as a parent? Obviously, we'd do it if you'd been tortured, because we wouldn't care, Mohammed. Your dad would just say, he deserves it, he's an annoying teenager, what the hell. But this is what's going on. So they pretended to torture her children. They actually showed her pictures of 2 of her children dead, which is just not true, because I know 2 of the 3 children now, who, by the way, Fawzia has brought up over all these years once we got him out. So this is the first guy I met who saw her in Bagram. I love Haji Salim Kuche, means nomad. And the reason he saw her is he's a nomad and he hates rules. It's so like me, I so hate rules. And so he disobeyed their rules a lot, and he kept getting put in the isolation unit, which is where he spent time with her. This is the isolation unit. It didn't look like that, but the guy there, Tapu, was another guy I took up to Bagram Air Force Base, and we took pictures of where he was. And these were with sort of dog kennel type cages. And he was in one of them, and they were wooden cages, and Afia was in the one next to him for several months before she was taken away to the discotheque. Now, she told me that she was tortured into making all these statements about, I tell you, Mohammed, how do you shoot down a satellite? Don't tell me you don't know. Don't tell me your education is so useless that they don't teach you to shoot down satellites. Sorry? With a very big gun? I don't think they teach you the right stuff in school there. Look, so she was told that she had to write out how to shoot down a satellite. I don't suppose there's a lot of people here who know how to shoot down a satellite. I was a scientist earlier in my life, and let me tell you, I don't know. I did teach my son how to build a nuclear bomb when I took him out of... It was fun. I took him out of school for a semester, and, I can get away with this. Don't do it. You're a bigoted Muslim guy. They'll come after you. But... So Wilf asked me how to build a nuclear bomb, so I taught him how to do that. I know how to do that. And then he asked me the next day, he said, what happens if I take my nuclear bomb? He was only 8 at this point. Take my nuclear bomb to the bottom of the Mariana Trench and blow it up. Well, amazingly, there's some crazy American who's made videos of what would happen, and the whole of California slips into the ocean. Anyway, don't ask your dad to build a nuclear bomb for you, all right? So she's there writing out how to shoot down satellites. And, her lawyers at trial were so useless. It's just not true how useless they were. They did nothing. These things are really interesting. I wanted to know where this came from. And it was this bit of paper here, and it has a little bit of writing. You can just see there. It's very blurry. That's her handwriting on how to shoot down a satellite. Now, the first thing you'd do, what would you do, Mohammed, if you wanted to see what she's doing? What's the first thing? I've given you a teeny hint here, Mohammed. I'm helping you out, man. What's that thing up on the top right-hand side? It's a magazine. You want to know where it comes from. It comes from that magazine. Now, that magazine, Discover Magazine, supposedly Afia wrote this out in the spring of 2008. But that magazine was only published in paper form in the United States. So what does that tell you as a super sleuth who's digging into what the CIA are doing. Who brought that to Bagram Air Force Base? Do you think Afia snuck out one night, flew to America, picked up a copy of Discover magazine, flew back and did the writing? So who do you think brought it? The CIA, obviously. And what we can prove is that the MWR, which is Morale, Welfare and Recreation of the military there on Bagram Air Force Base, had that magazine that was only published in America there on the base. So that's proof positive that Afia is telling the truth when she says she was forced to do that. And there's other stuff. There's this one. This is about the accidental terrorist. That was a document they said she had. It comes from this magazine from January 2008, again, only published in America. So we can prove again. This is what's fun about this stuff. This is why you've got to come and do my internship, Mohammed, because we'll teach you how to do this. And then you go around being a sleuth, and you can use their own stuff to prove they're lying and to prove that she's telling the truth. And as you can see, it cost $4.99 in January 2008 in the US. So clearly the CIA brought that. Then you get, don't do this either, Mohammed, all right? I've got a copy of Homemade Semtex. Do you know how to make explosives? What does he learn in school? Do you have chemistry? Not really. That was a fun bit of chemistry. I did chemistry A-level, and we would blow things up. God, that was fun. That was the only fun part of it. This is, again, something that she had in her possession, and it had to come from the Homemade Semtex book, which I've got a copy of. Goodness knows what the CIA makes of my purchasing plan on Google and Amazon for the last few months. Anyway, so we're able now to prove that what she said was true, which is she was forced to write out all of this stuff. Now, why were they forcing her to write out stupid stuff about nuclear bombs and shooting down satellites? This is where it comes, it's this, all right? And this is one of the great ironies of this, and this is why Fawzia is such a great hero. That woman there, Afia Siddiqui, she got her medical degree from Harvard University in the US. She's a very, very brilliant woman. She had rounded up support. All this time, 5 years, Afia's been in Bagram being tortured. The kids were all missing. Fawzia is determined to find her. And she, by 2008, 5 years of missing, Fawzia has made Afia the most famous woman in Pakistan. Now, it turns out that's catastrophic for Afia, because, Pervez Musharraf, who knows who Pervez Musharraf was? Come on, you do. Yeah. Was he a good guy or a bad guy? Very bad guy. He was still dictator in Pakistan, but he was teetering towards the end of his time as dictator of Pakistan, right? If the most famous woman in Pakistan, here, you've got to think about this, Mohammed. I want you to think that you're an evil ISI agent and you're working for Pervez Musharraf, who's an evil dictator of Pakistan, right? And I'm going to have a question for you. So this incredibly famous woman, Afia Siddiqui, the CIA's finally worked out that she's nobody and that they should just get rid of her, right? And the Americans would just have got rid of her because they don't care. No one in America knows who Afia Siddiqui is. No one cares. And we've done so many bad things in the last 25 years. This just would have been water off a duck's back. The problem was the Pakistanis could not afford to have Afia show back up in Pakistan just towards the end, what's going to be the end of Pervez Musharraf's time. What are you going to do about it as a wicked, evil ISI agent? Keep her for longer. The Americans don't want to do that. So what are you going to do? No, you're not going to send her back. Remember, you're an evil ISI agent. What you're going to do begins with the letter M. Move on? No. I hate to tell you this, Mohammed, you're just too nice to be an ISI agent. You've been well brought up by your dad here. No, they're going to murder her, right? They're going to assassinate her. Have you ever heard the phrase, "Who will rid me of this troublesome priest?" If you haven't, it's because you don't remember Henry IV, because that's what Henry IV said when he wanted to get rid of Thomas à Becket back about 700 years ago. Obviously Musharraf said something similar and said, who's going to get rid of this annoying woman? And so they came up with this plan. The Americans don't really care. You can kill her, you can do what you like. We're not going to get our hands dirty. We're going to make you get your hands dirty. But the Pakistanis come up with what's called the disposal operation. And I cannot tell you, when I almost said involved in, but no, I've represented a number of people who were subjected to disposal operations. The most famous, who I don't know if most of you have heard of him, is Ibn Sheikh al-Libi. Do you know who I mean? Anyone know who Ibn Sheikh al-Libi is? It's really shocking to me that you don't know this, because it is the worst example ever. Ibn Sheikh al-Libi was a Libyan, obviously. He hated al-Qaeda, actually, because bin Laden had closed down his camp. He had a camp in Afghanistan, and he was only interested in one thing, which was getting rid of Gaddafi in Libya. And so he was the very first person in Bagram. His number was 001 in Bagram. And my client, Shaka Rama, saw him there because Shaka was 005. And he was telling the FBI whatever the FBI wanted to know, because he just wasn't into this whole, murdering everyone on 9/11 thing. But the CIA won the argument about how to get intelligence quickly. So they came in, and Shaka told me this in Guantanamo. They put Ibn Sheikh al-Libi in a coffin, and they carried him out, took him to Egypt, tortured him with electric cattle prods until he said that Saddam Hussein was working with al-Qaeda on weapons of mass destruction, which then George W. Bush and Colin Powell said in the UN, and it was one of the 3 reasons we had the Iraq War. Now, he immediately recanted and said this is all nonsense. And he could never show up in Guantanamo Bay. What we did to him, the Americans, was we sent him back to Libya, to Gaddafi, who then killed him. I had a way into him, right? I knew all about his case back in 2003. And we were trying to get in to see him. But they murdered him, and that's called a disposal operation, because they never wanted him to see the light of day. They planned the same for Afia. This guy, do you think that guy is Afghan or Pakistani? Who votes Pakistani? Oh, come on. Of course it's Pakistani. Who votes Afghan? No, don't vote Mohammed. You're doing so well so far today. Keep your hand down. He's obviously Pakistani. This guy is the ISI agent who was in the bus. They put Afia in a bus to go from Kabul to Ghazni, and they told her if she went to Ghazni, she could have her daughter back and piss off back to Pakistan, live happily ever after. That was a lie. They put her in the bus with her son Ahmed. She didn't know it was Ahmed. He wouldn't say he was Ahmed because he'd been told he was Ihsan Ali. He was dressed up. Here's a question for you. Midsummer in Afghanistan, very, very hot. He's wearing a winter coat with 4 big pockets full of fruit. Why is that? Again, you've got to imagine you're an evil ISI agent. Why would they do that? Bomb. Did someone say bomb? Yeah, you're right. He's a suicide bomber. So they want him to look like a suicide bomber. Afia's dressed in a full chador, a full blue chador. You can't see any of her. She's not sure it's her son. He's not sure it's his mum. They're in the bus together. They're told to go sit outside this mosque in Ghazni, and then the daughter would be delivered to them and they can leave. No, that's not what's going to happen. The ISI has called in a suicide bomber tip 2 days ahead of time. This is what I love about this thing, is they're so stupid. Because we got proof that it happened 2 days ahead of time, and they called it into the wrong mosque. And so Afia is sitting outside the Khalid bin Walid mosque, and they've called it into the Al-Jihad mosque. And so she sits outside this mosque for 7 hours waiting for her daughter to arrive. And, when I went to Ghazni for the first time, they said, no one will talk to you. Oh, come on. I had 6 people sign affidavits in 3 hours because everyone remembered this woman. It was a male-only mosque, and everyone remembered this woman who didn't speak Farsi sitting outside the mosque for hours, and they didn't know what she was doing there. But there was one guy, a guy called Muhammad Ajmal Mohammadi. I'm pretty sure I have a picture of dear Mohammadi here. Yeah, there we go. So that's Mohammadi. He was a tailor in Ghazni, and he'd done some tailoring in Pakistan. He spoke Urdu. So in the end, he sees this woman, his tailor shop. She's sitting just there, and his tailor shop is right across the street. And he goes there. Sorry, are you coming to tell me I'm talking too long?
No, the adhan is on, just 1 minute. The prayer adhan is on.
Oh, okay. All right. He's telling me to shut up. We'll have a moment's respectful silence before I pick on Muhammad again. Okay. All right. So Mohammadi went and talked to her because he spoke the language and said, look, it's dark, it's a war zone, go stay with my mum around the corner. And she says, no, they're bringing my daughter. And they're having this argument when along come all the Afghan National Police with their AK-47s, and they're going to just shoot her. And the only reason they don't shoot her is Mohammadi stands in the way and says she's not a suicide bomber. And indeed, there's a side story which I love. I don't tell this very often because it only works with you, not with my Western audience, which is that they snuck around behind Afia, and one of the policemen did, and ripped off her chador. And Mohammadi was so offended by this in the way that a conservative person in Afghanistan would be, that he quit being a tailor and joined the Mujahideen the next day, which I thought was pretty funny and a good illustration of how foolish some of our actions are. So she's in the Afghan National Police headquarters. I've been there. They're very friendly and helpful. And there's a curtain across the room, and this is where the sides differ. She says, what turns out to be totally the truth, which is she hears Americans coming into the room. She's behind this curtain. She peeks around the curtain. One of them says she's on the loose, bang, bang, and shoots her twice in the stomach. And then they discover she's an innocent, unarmed woman, and they make up a story, which is, they say, they all come into the room, they look behind the curtain, there's no one there, that's physically impossible. And then they're having a nice chat with their Afghan friends, and 2 minutes later she reaches under the curtain, picks up the M4 machine gun. Where is the safety catch on an M4 machine gun? Are you people just totally ignorant here in Peters, whatever the hell it is? Anyway, and flips off the safety catch and fires bullets, and their proof of that is there are 2 holes in the wall. Well, what we've discovered is there's a video of the room from earlier that day, and the 2 holes are already in the wall. And they never found any bullets from an M4 rifle. There was no gunshot residue, no nothing. That's the legal term. I'm going to teach you something here, Mohammed. The legal term for the American story is total bullshit. That's the legal term, right? So anyway, he did shoot her. She ends up in hospital. She almost dies, but then having been patched up back in Bagram, of all places, they take her halfway around the world, put her on trial 9/10 of a mile from ground zero, from the World Trade Center. And she has no witnesses. She has these lawyers paid for by the Pakistan government, paid $2 million. One of them said, that's how I got my Lamborghini. And they put no evidence on for her, and she gets 86 years in prison. In the meantime, you got Ahmed. Fawzia managed to track him down and get him home. You got Mariam. I had tea with Hamid Karzai, and he described how he helped get her home. But then you've got this Suleiman thing, and this is something I'm going to do in the US, which is we've done, not me, because I'm technologically hopeless. We've done AI reconstructions of what this little child would look like through the years using pictures of his family. And he was only 6 months, remember. That would have been him when he's about 3 or 4. This is him when he's about 10. This is him when he's 18, and this is what he'd look like today. And we're going to run a program across the US for some kid who looks a bit Pakistani, who doesn't know who his real biological parents are, to come forward, and we'll see if we can't identify the child, because I think we owe that to Afia. Now, Afia ends up getting the second longest term in the last 45 years for attempted murder in the United States for this, 86 years. She's taken to FMC Carswell. Look, I've been to every death row in America pretty much, and FMC Carswell's a women's prison. Is worse than any death row prison. When I first talked to her, she said, I've been raped several times, I've been sexually assaulted endlessly. I wasn't quite sure whether to believe that or not, but then we look into it. FMC Carswell has the highest sexual assault rate of any prison in America. There have been 12 employees of the prison convicted of rape, including the Christian minister. So it's true. And obviously we're trying to put a stop to all that. But this is the real issue, right? Who here, put your hand up if you think there's nothing you can do to help Afia Siddiqui? Because then I'm going to come and slap you, frankly. Mohammed, don't put your hand up. I'm just warning you. There's, I'm tired. I'm feeling a bit American. I might want to torture someone. I haven't done it yet today, except for the poor people who've had to ride around with me. I've tortured them all day. So look, this is what you've got to think. Now, I do all of this for free, because otherwise my mother would shoot me, not kill me from heaven. She died 2 years ago, but she'd still get me. So, that's not a problem. And we have to. As Americans, we have to do that, because we're the ones who screwed these people's lives up. They can't afford an American lawyer. What's your average salary in this country is about 29,000 rands a year. That's less than an American corporate lawyer in New York who went to law school with me makes an hour. We pay those lawyers $2,000 an hour. It's madness. So you can't afford American lawyers. So we do that for free. That's not a problem. But there's a lot of other stuff that needs to be funded, that Fauzia has a program, the Afia movement, to fund it, including, for example, trying to find Suleiman, including sending money to Afia to make her life a little less horrible in that prison, and so on and so forth. So that's one thing you can do. Another thing, I really mean this. Who's a medical professional here? Who knows a medical professional? Come on, one of you must be. All people of Pakistan heritage become doctors. We know that. That's a scientific fact, isn't it, right? Anyway, we need people to help us in New York signing off on a brief saying that she should have health care. She has no health care. She's missing all her top teeth. They give her no health care in that prison. We need, these imam types, these people who know an awful lot more than me about Islam. She's not allowed. Omar Suleiman, someone I respect immensely, one of the few people in the world I have to look up to because he's 6'7". He's really tall. I have to look up to him metaphorically and physically. He's such a nice guy. I saw him in London again last week. They won't let him in. He lives in Dallas-Fort Worth, where her prison is, and they won't let him in to see her. She's not seen an imam in the 23 years that she's been locked up, and that's just wrong. And we need you guys to all sign off on a brief saying that's outrageous. Anyone who thinks she can't do anything, you can write to her. And you write to her at this address, letters4afia@gmail.com. That comes to me. I then take out anything you say about, killing Americans. We just don't want that stuff. And it's got to be in English. And then I send it in legal mail. You've got to write stuff about how much she inspires you and how much you admire her. Because then this poor woman, who is really, really traumatized, when they're threatening her with all sorts of horrible things in this prison, she reads the letters out. And it gives her immense solace to be able to do that. So who here thinks you can't write a letter, Mohammed? You can write a letter, right? When did you last write a letter? You've never written a letter in your life, have you, Mohammed? I used to have to do it to my parents every Friday, or I couldn't go out and play football or cricket. So, my mother saved all those terrible letters. I can't imagine that she had to read. All about my cricket bowling average is all my mother ever got letters from me about. These are things you can do, and that's enough from me. So now you can heckle and ask any questions you like and whatever. But we're going to get her out this year, and I'm going to go to New York in about 2 weeks, and we'll try and bully the U.S. attorneys. The Southern District of New York, where her prosecutors are from, they're not unreasonable people, actually. They are currently prosecuting Maduro, the president of Venezuela there. So they got other fish to fry, right? They just can do me a favor and let poor old Afia go. And that's what I hope to work out for her. But who knows? And I've won a lot of cases in America, hundreds of them. But it's always the weird ones you lose, the ones that clearly should win. Because part of the problem is, who's going to believe all this stuff, right? Why does anyone write fiction when you could just write the crazy stuff the Americans do and you don't have to have any imagination? So anyway, I hope we'll work it out this year. If it doesn't, it's his fault. All right.
For gracing us in Pietermaritzburg, I will call upon Mr. Sunil Mahabir, the representative of the community of Pietermaritzburg, as well as the Palestine Solidarity Committee, to hand over a token of appreciation and a certificate to Mr. Clive.
Amandla! Amandla! Viva the people of Palestine, viva! Viva the people of Sudan, viva! Viva the people of Kashmir, viva! Amandla! Clive, on behalf of the Palestine Solidarity Group of Maritzburg, we want to present to you a little certificate of recognition which essentially pays homage to you for the wonderful work that you've done over the last 5 or 6 decades in relation to...
I'm not that old.
I'm working on the basis of appearance rather than... Yeah, Clive, in terms of the work that you've done to promote the human rights agenda and for ensuring that the people of... to ensuring that the human rights agenda is actually advanced and prioritized, especially for those who are the most marginalized people on the planet. Thank you for the great work that you've done, and our appreciation to your wife and your son for affording us the privilege of having you with us. So on behalf of the Palestine Solidarity Group, we want to say thank you to Clive and hand him the certificate of recognition. Thank you. Bye.